As the story reaches its quietest place, it does not arrive at an ending. It simply thins like mist dissolving into the dark. The monastery remains, but it no longer needs to be described. Its presence is felt rather than seen, a steady calm that no longer asks for attention. The night has taken over now, doing what it has always done best. Smoothing edges, softening thoughts, carrying what is heavy without comment. There is no final lesson waiting here, no conclusion to hold on to, only a gentle release. Inside the monastery, the deepest hours pass unnoticed. Bells are silent, candles have long burned out, stone walls breathe cool air, and sleep moves freely from one body to another, unbroken, unguarded. Time is no longer something to observe. It has returned to what it always was, a slow turning that continues whether or not it is named. The rhythms we follow through this story no longer need words. They live where words cannot reach, in breath, in weight, in the way the body sinks more fully into stillness. If there was ever a need to remember anything, it has passed. Memory is unnecessary now. The night does not ask you to carry meaning forward. It only asks that you rest inside it. The monastery fades gently, not because it disappears, but because it has done its work. It has reminded the body of something it already knew. That rest is natural, that slowing down is safe, that nothing essential is lost when you let go. Beyond stone walls and centuries, the same night surrounds you, wherever you are listening. It presses softly against windows, settles on rooftops, moves quietly through trees and empty streets. The world itself has grown still enough to hold you. There is no separation now between story and listener, between past and present, between effort and rest. Everything has narrowed to this simple experience: being carried. Thoughts may still drift in and out. That is fine, they do not need to be pushed away. The night is wide enough to hold them without disturbance. They will settle on their own, like dust after motion stops. Breath continues, slow and steady. The body knows how to sleep, even when the mind hesitates. It has done this thousands of times before. It does not need instruction. If wakefulness lingers, it does so without urgency. There is no deadline for rest. The circle will continue turning whether you notice or not. The old rhythms have already reached you, not as ideas, but as permission. Permission to stop trying, permission to release the day, permission to trust the dark. Inside the monastery, morning will eventually arrive. As it always has, light will return to stone floors. Bells will ring again, but none of that is required now. The future can wait without consequence. This is the quiet truth the night has always carried. Nothing needs to be resolved before sleep. Life does not fall apart in rest. It repairs itself there. As the story loosens further, words become less distinct. Sentences fade into tone. Tone fades into presence. Presence fades into something even softer. Silence that is not empty, but full. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below or simply hold it quietly for yourself. Both are equally welcome. No one rests alone. Every listener becomes part of this shared stillness. Every quiet breath adds warmth to the dark. If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Something simple, something kind, something that does not need to be answered. And if you wish to return another night, do not forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys with tedious history for sleep. This quiet corner will be here, unchanged, waiting patiently. For now, there is nothing more to follow, nothing more to imagine. The night has taken the story from here, and it knows exactly where to carry you. As the night settles into its deepest stillness, something subtle begins to happen. The distance between past and present softens centuries. Fold gently together, and the monastery no longer feels far away. It feels close, familiar, like a memory. The body recognizes even if the mind cannot place it. Time, which once felt like a line stretching endlessly forward, loosens into something wider, more forgiving. Moments overlap. Old rhythms echo inside modern nights, and without effort, you find yourself resting in more than one time at once. Inside the monastery, nothing announces this merging. It happens. Quietly as all lasting things do, the stone walls remain unchanged. The same bells have rung for generations, and yet each night is new, held within a pattern older than any single life. This coexistence was never strange to those who lived here. They did not separate history from the present moment. The past lived on in repetition, in gestures learned from others, passed down without explanation, each movement carrying the weight of many lives before it. When a monk drew the curtain at night, he repeated a motion performed countless times before, not in imitation, but in continuity. The gesture did not belong to one person. It belonged to time itself. In this way, rest became communal across centuries, each sleeper adding their quiet presence to a long, unbroken chain, held together by shared need rather than shared memory. Even now, as you lie listening, you participate in something similar, your body responding to cues that have soothed humans for generations. Darkness, repetition, gentle sound, containment. None of these are new, and that familiarity is what makes them effective. Modern life often insists on separation, work from rest, past from present, productivity from care, yet the body resists these divisions. It seeks wholeness, continuity, a sense that everything belongs. The monastery offered that belonging through rhythm by allowing life to unfold without fragmentation. Day flowed into night, effort into rest, silence into sleep without sharp edges. As centuries passed, the world outside grew faster, brighter, more demanding. But these rhythms did not disappear. They receded into quieter spaces, evenings, weekends, rituals practiced almost unconsciously. Perhaps this is why certain moments feel unexpectedly peaceful, sitting quietly at dusk, listening to familiar sounds, watching light fade. These moments reconnect you to a time when slowing down was not a choice, but a given. Inside the monastery, there was no nostalgia for the past. Because the past was still present, alive in repetition, history was not something remembered, it was something lived. This is a gentle realization, not one that asks for reflection, only for recognition. You are not as separate from those earlier lives as you might think. Their ways of resting still support you. As the story moves closer to its quiet close, it asks nothing more of you than to notice this soft connection. The sense that you are accompanied by something older, steadier, calmer than the thoughts of the day. Notice how the mind responds when it feels accompanied, how vigilance eases, how effort drops away. This is not imagination. It is nervous systems recognizing a shared rhythm. Inside the monastery, sleep deepens, breathing slows, bodies heavy with rest, the night holding each person without distinction, without judgment. Outside those walls, the same night spreads across fields, towns, cities, across time zones and centuries, carrying countless sleepers in its steady, indifferent kindness. You are part of that vast, quiet movement now. Well, whether you are fully aware of it or not, the night does not require awareness to do its work. As you rest here, the need to understand fades. The desire to connect dissolves into connection itself. There is nothing to reach for, nothing to resolve. The past has already given what it can, the present receives it without question, and the future waits patiently, knowing it will have its turn. Soon, the story will loosen even further, releasing structure entirely, allowing words to become background and background to become silence. For now, remain in this shared stillness where time overlaps gently and rest belongs to everyone equally. The monastery sleeps, the world sleeps, and you are held within the same quiet permission, carried not forward, but inward, toward a rest that does not need to be earned or explained. As the permission to rest settles quietly into place, the night expands around it, not wider but deeper, like water growing. Still, after a long journey, the monastery remains unchanged, yet something within the listener has softened a gentle readiness to be held rather than to hold. Night here does not demand attention. It offers containment, thick walls, low light, familiar sounds, the world reduced to what is necessary, and in that reduction, the mind finds relief. This was always the role of night, not an absence of life, but a vessel for it. A space where effort dissolves and presence remains, where the body is allowed to exist without purpose. Inside the monastery, sleep was never forced. It arrived because everything around it invited arrival, darkness without threat, silence without emptiness, routine without pressure. Even now, the body responds to these invitations instinctively. When the environment narrows, the nervous system recognizes safety, vigilance fades, rest becomes possible. Think of how the night feels when it is kind, when nothing presses, when time seems to pause rather than advance. Those moments are not accidents. They are alignments with something ancient and familiar. The monks did not analyze sleep. They prepared for it, understanding that sleep cannot be chased, only welcomed. And welcome is created through consistency. Candles burned low each night, not because they were instructed to, but because the body learned to associate that glow with rest, with quiet, with release. Outside the monastery, ordinary people practiced the same wisdom in different forms. Fires dimmed, voices lowered. Work ended not at a precise moment, but when the light changed, night signaled that it was time to let go. Over centuries, artificial light blurred these signals. Yet the body still listens for them, still seeks cues that say, "You are held now." This is why certain sounds soothe at night: steady rain, a distant train, the hum of a fan. They create a boundary of continuity, something constant enough that the mind can stop scanning for change. Inside the monastery, silence was never absolute. It was textured, layered with breath, with the soft settling of bodies, with the wind brushing stone. These sounds told the sleepers they were not alone. Modern life often misunderstands this need, equating silence with isolation. But the old rhythm knew better. Sleep thrives when the night feels inhabited, gently watched over by familiar presence. As you listen now, you may notice that the story itself has become part of that presence. A steady voice, predictable in its tone, unconcerned with destination, simply accompanying you through the dark. This companionship is not intrusive. It does not ask you to respond. It only stays, and staying is enough. The monastery was designed for this kind of staying. Walls that did not shift, routines that did not surprise, time that did not demand. Everything arranged to support the body's natural descent into rest. There is a quiet intelligence in that design, an understanding that humans rest best when they feel contained rather than exposed. Even today, we recreate this containment in small ways. Blankets tucked around the body, pillows arranged just so, doors closed, lights dimmed, all efforts to shape the night into something that holds. None of this is indulgence. It is necessity, a continuation of practices that kept people sleeping through uncertain centuries. Inside the monastery, night was not feared. It was respected, allowed to do its work without interference. Sleep was seen as a collaboration between body and environment. This collaboration still exists, and when we honor it, rest comes more easily. Perhaps that is why certain nights feel deeper than others, not because we are more tired, but because we have allowed ourselves to be held rather than distracted. As this story continues to flow, there is nothing you need to extract from it, no lesson to remember. Its purpose is not to inform, but to accompany like a quiet presence at the edge of sleep. The night outside your window may be different from the monastery's night, yet the same principles apply: narrowing, softening, repeating, holding. In this shared darkness, past and present overlap, the old rhythms recognizing themselves within modern bodies. The monastery sleeps on, unchanged, while centuries pass unnoticed around it, a reminder that calm does not need novelty, it needs consistency. As you sink deeper into the night, allow that consistency to do its work. Let the edges of thought blur. Let the sense of self become lighter, less defined, as if you are resting inside a space that knows you without needing to name you. Soon, the story will begin its final descent, not toward an ending, but toward an opening, where reflection loosens completely and rest takes over. For now, remain where you are, held by the night, accompanied without being watched, supported without being asked. Nothing is required, nothing is expected. The night is already doing what it has always done, carrying you gently towards sleep. As the circle of night continues its slow turning, another quiet understanding rises to the surface, one that once shaped entire lives, and now lingers faintly at the edges of memory. Rest was never something to be earned, it was something that was allowed. Inside the monastery, no one stayed awake to prove devotion. No one measured their worth by how long they could endure exhaustion. When the hour arrived, work loosened its grip, not because it was finished, but because it was time to stop. This distinction mattered deeply. Rest was not a prize waiting at the end of effort. It was a boundary placed around effort itself, protecting the body and the spirit from being consumed by endless doing. The bell that signaled rest did not ask whether enough had been accomplished. It rang regardless, offering permission that could not be negotiated away. And in that certainty, anxiety softened. Outside the monastery, ordinary lives once followed similar permissions fields. Rested after harvest tools were set aside when light faded. Even animals knew when to slow. Humans learned by watching by, listening by accepting that not everything could be completed in one day. Over time, this permission thinned, replaced by ideas of productivity and improvement, yet the body never fully accepted the change. It continued to crave boundaries, to long for moments when stopping was not a failure, but a natural pause. Perhaps this is why weekends feel different, why certain evenings carry a lighter air. They echo an older rule, one that said, "Now you may rest, and no explanation is required." Inside the monastery, this rule was woven into every hour. Rest arrived predictably, and because it arrived reliably, it was trusted. No one clung to wakefulness out of fear of losing time. Tomorrow would bring its own portion. This trust changed how sleep felt. It was not an escape from responsibility. It was part of responsibility itself. Caring for the body was seen as caring for the work that would follow. As you listen now, consider how often you delay rest, waiting for a sense of completion that rarely arrives. The old rhythm offers a different kindness, it says. Stopping is not conditional. This idea does not demand belief. It works quietly, when given space. The nervous system responds almost immediately. Muscles release, breath slows, vigilance eases. Inside the monastery, nights were not filled with guilt. There was no review of undone tasks. The structure held those concerns until morning, allowing sleep to be deep and unguarded. Even now, many of us sleep best when we feel permitted to do so. When obligations feel distant, when no one expects anything further. This is not coincidence, it is memory resurfacing. The permission to rest once came from outside, from bells, from fading light, from shared agreement. Today, it often must come from within, and that makes it harder, but not impossible. Small rituals can carry this permission, closing a book, turning off a light, settling into a familiar position, each gesture quietly declaring, "Enough for today." The monastery understood this well. It built these declarations into stone and sound, so no one had to decide alone. As centuries passed, the walls fell away, but the need remained. Humans still seek moments when they can release responsibility without fear. This is why certain phrases soothe, sleep well, rest now, tomorrow can wait. They echo the same ancient allowance. Tonight, this story offers that permission softly. Without instruction, without demand, you do not need to accomplish anything else before resting. The day has already been held. Notice how the body responds when it hears this. Perhaps a subtle settling, perhaps a sigh that arrives without effort. These are signs that the old rhythm still lives within you. Inside the monastery, the night continues undisturbed. Bells silent now. The work of the day complete simply because the day has ended. Nothing is lost by resting. Nothing falls apart in the dark. The circle will turn again, and whatever needs attention will return in its own time. As this understanding settles, there is no need to hold on to it tightly. Let it drift like everything else in this story. Its effect does not depend on memory. Soon, we will move toward the final widening, where these quiet lessons merge fully with the present moment, where past and present rest together without tension. For now, allow the idea of permission to wrap gently around you, like the thick walls of the monastery, keeping effort outside, holding rest within. The night has already given you what you need, and it asks nothing in return. As the night grows deeper, the monastery rests within a shape older than memory, a circle rather than a line. Here time does not point forward with insistence. It turns gently back upon itself, repeating, returning, reassuring those who live inside it that nothing essential is ever truly lost. This circular sense of time was once common. Days folded into nights, seasons into years. Life understood not as a race towards something distant, but as a movement within something continuous, beginnings and endings touching softly, like hands meeting in the dark. Inside the monastery, this understanding shaped everything. Bells did not announce progress. They marked position. Where one was within the great turning, not how much had been accomplished, and in that difference, a great burden was lifted. The circle asked nothing to be completed, only participated in to wake, to work, to rest, to sleep, and to do so again, not because repetition was dull, but because it was stabilizing. It told the body, you are where you are supposed to be. Outside these walls, the world slowly shifted toward lines, timelines, deadlines, histories, told as sequences of events marching forward, yet even there, the circle never vanished entirely. It survived in calendars and anniversaries, in the return of familiar holidays that quietly reset the rhythm of life. The ring, worn on a finger, carried this idea in miniature, its unbroken shape resting against the skin. A constant reminder that time could be held, not tightly, but gently, that life was not only about arrival, but about return. Within the monastery, rings were not symbols of wealth or status. They were simple, unadorned, their meaning carried quietly, touching the body without demanding thought, like the steady pulse beneath the wrist. This circular logic extended into sleep itself. Night was not an ending, but a passage, a necessary turning inward that made the next day possible. Rest was not absence, it was preparation, woven seamlessly into the flow of living. When fear arose, as it inevitably did, it was met not with urgency, but with patience. Tomorrow would come, and tomorrow had come many times before. This knowledge softened anxiety, turning it into something bearable. As you listen now, perhaps you feel a subtle shift, the sense that there is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to reach. This moment is not a step toward another, it is complete in itself. The circle offers this comfort. You are not falling behind, you are simply moving through. Inside the monastery, sleep arrives without negotiation. The body recognizes the familiar signs, the quiet, the dark, the steady rhythm of breathing around it, and it yields, trusting the cycle to carry it through the night. In modern life, we often resist this yielding, stretching the line of the day long into the night, believing rest must be justified. But the body remembers another way, one that does not argue. You may notice that certain nights feel easier than others, not because circumstances are different, but because you allow yourself to step back into the circle, to trust repetition rather than novelty. This is why familiar stories soothe, why predictable sounds calm, why returning to the same routines at night helps the mind loosen. The circle is closing gently around you. Inside the monastery, no one worries about missing something while they sleep. Nothing essential happens outside the cycle. Whatever is needed will return again. This belief does not deny change, it absorbs it. Change becomes part of the turning, not a threat to it. As centuries pass, this understanding flows quietly into philosophy, into religion, into the small sayings passed between generations, reminding people that life moves in seasons, that rest follows effort, that effort follows rest. Tonight, you are invited to step back into that ancient understanding, to let the line of the day curve softly into night, to feel yourself held by a rhythm that has carried countless others before you. Notice how the body responds when pressure lifts, shoulders soften, breath deepens, thoughts lose their urgency. This is not something you must achieve. It happens naturally when resistance fades. The monastery, resting in darkness, offers this lesson without words, its walls standing as proof that continuity is possible, that life can be shaped to support rest rather than erode it. As this story continues, we will gently widen our view, seeing how these ancient rhythms still pulse beneath modern life, offering quiet guidance to those willing to listen. For now, remain inside the circle. Let time turn without effort. You are exactly where you need to be, and the night will carry you the rest of the way. As the night continues its steady turning, the monastery remains still, yet its influence stretches far beyond stone walls, drifting quietly through centuries, settling into ordinary lives in ways so subtle they often go unnoticed. These are the quiet fossils of everyday life habits shaped long ago that continue to support us without asking to be seen. Time moves forward, empires rise and soften. Cities grow dense with sound and motion, yet certain gestures endure, not because they are efficient, but because they comfort. They carry forward a knowledge older than words, a knowledge the body remembers even when the mind forgets. Consider the simple act of sitting down to eat with familiar tools, the weight of a spoon or fork resting in the hand. Once these objects were strange, even unsettling, not because they were dangerous, but because they altered intimacy. Eating had long been a direct connection between hand and food. Changing that ritual required trust, and trust arrived slowly. Yet over time, the new became familiar, not through argument, but through repetition. And with familiarity came calm. The body learned the rhythm: lift, pause, chew, swallow. The same motion repeated until it faded into the background, freeing the mind to rest even while awake. Inside the monastery, meals followed a similar logic. Simple food, eaten slowly, often in silence, not to suppress joy, but to remove distraction, to allow the nervous system to settle into predictability. The absence of choice reduced effort, and effortless moments became restful ones. Beyond these walls, ordinary households absorbed the same lesson, tables arranged the same way each night, places remembered without being marked, the comfort of knowing where one belonged without being told. These patterns were not about control, they were about relief, about reducing the number of decisions required to move through a day, and in doing so, reducing the quiet tension that builds when nothing feels stable. Even clothing carries these traces: darker garments worn for mourning, loose fabrics chosen for rest, not because they announce emotion loudly, but because they hold it gently, allowing grief or fatigue to exist without explanation. In the monastery, robes served this purpose perfectly: wide, heavy, forgiving. They did not cling or demand attention. They allowed the body to disappear just enough to rest inside anonymity, to sleep without being watched by its own reflection. Today, we seek the same effect in softer fabrics, familiar clothes reserved for evening, garments that signal the end of performance, the beginning of quiet. The night, then as now, was a threshold, a place between effort and surrender, and humans learned to mark it carefully, not with celebration, but with subtle cues: dimming lights, slowing movements, lowering voices, the world gently shrinking to match the body's need for rest. These habits spread not because they were enforced, but because they worked, because they made sleep easier, because they softened the edges of uncertainty. Inside the monastery, time was shaped to serve the body, not the other way around. And that inversion made all the difference. Productivity was never the measure of worth. Presence was enough. As centuries passed, this understanding thinned, stretched, adapted, yet it never vanished completely. It lives on in weekend pauses, in evenings that feel different from afternoons, in the unspoken agreement that night is for slowing down. Even the way we arrange our homes reflects this inheritance: bedrooms tucked away from noise beds, positioned for comfort rather than display small lamps, casting warm pools of light, all descendants of a desire to feel held by the dark rather than exposed to it. The monastery did not invent these instincts, it refined them, protected them, passed them along through quiet example, demonstrating that calm could be structured, that peace could be practiced. As you listen, perhaps you recognize these fossils in your own life. Routines that feel natural without knowing why, habits you return to when you are tired or overwhelmed. These are not failures of imagination, they are successes of survival. They are reminders that you come from a long line of people who learned how to soften the night, who found ways to rest even when the world felt uncertain. The discovery here is gentle, not dramatic. Simply this: many things we call modern comforts are old companions wearing new clothes. Their purpose unchanged: to help the body feel safe enough to sleep. Inside the monastery, the night continues, undisturbed by revelation. The monks sleep as they always have, breathing steady, bodies heavy with rest, the structure around them doing its quiet work. And as this understanding settles softly within you, there is no need to analyze it further. Awareness alone is enough. The body will take what it needs. Soon, we will move deeper into reflection, exploring what it means to live within rhythms larger than ourselves, to trust patterns shaped by time rather than resisting them. For now, let these quiet fossils remain where they are, supporting you without demanding attention. The night is still unfolding, and there's plenty of space to rest inside it. As the rhythm of night deepens, the monastery rests inside its familiar pattern, and within that pattern lies a quiet truth. Many of the habits that soothe us were born not from comfort, but from uncertainty long ago when the world felt unpredictable. And fragile people shaped their fears into forms they could live with, softening what could not be controlled. In those earlier centuries, darkness carried weight, not metaphorical weight, but real uncertainty. Night hid dangers. The daylight revealed sounds traveled farther. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and the human mind, always searching for meaning, filled the quiet with imagined threats. Yet instead of surrendering to fear, people responded with structure. They did not erase the unknown, they framed it: rules, rituals, boundaries. Small gestures that transformed anxiety into something manageable. Inside shared sleeping spaces, curtains became more than fabric. They became gentle borders, a way to claim a small territory of calm within a crowded world. Pulling them closed was not an act of separation, but of reassurance, a signal that this portion of the night belonged to rest. The same was true of rings worn on fingers, circles with no beginning and no end, symbols not of possession, but of continuity, the promise that life moved in cycles, that endings folded back into beginnings, that time itself was not rushing toward disappearance, but turning patiently. These objects were simple, but they carried meaning, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, touching the skin, resting in the hand, reminding the body that it was part of something larger and enduring. Even the act of closing a door held significance, not to isolate, but to define, to say, this space is safe, this moment is contained, what lies beyond can wait until morning. Within the monastery, these gestures blended seamlessly into daily life. No one stopped to analyze them. They were practiced. Because they worked, because they eased the nervous system, because they allowed sleep to arrive without resistance. Outside the walls, similar instincts shaped ordinary homes. Families slept close together. Fires burned low through the night. Routines repeated until they became invisible, all serving the same purpose: to quiet the heart when the world felt uncertain. What is striking is not how different those lives were from ours, but how similar the needs remain, even now, with lights that banish darkness and devices that promise constant connection. The mind still searches for boundaries, for signals that say, you are done for today. We close curtains, lock doors, silence notifications, actions that mirror ancient gestures. Though the fears have changed shape, the solution remains gentle structure. Inside the monastery, fear was never confronted directly. It was softened through repetition. Made smaller by predictability, the unknown was acknowledged, but not allowed to dominate. This approach carried wisdom, not through argument, but through lived experience. Over time, the body learned that night could be survived, that rest could be trusted, that morning would come. As you listen now, consider how many of your own evening habits serve the same quiet purpose. Perhaps you prepare the same drink each night. Arrange your space in a particular way, return to familiar sounds. These are not coincidences, they are echoes. They are ways of telling the deeper parts of yourself that you are safe enough to let go. The monastery's rules were never about correctness. They were about calm. They did not promise protection from everything, only from chaos within. And that may be the most important distinction. The goal was never to eliminate fear, but to make space around it, so it did not press too closely against the mind when sleep was needed. Over time, these habits fossilized into tradition, passed down, reshaped, absorbed into culture. Some survived intact, others transformed, but their purpose remained quietly intact. We inherited them without instructions, without explanation, and perhaps that is why they still work. The body does not need theory, it responds to pattern. In the monastery, the night continues its slow unfolding, breathing in, breathing out. The walls hold their silence. The hours turn like a wheel that never stops moving, and within that movement, fear loosens its grip. Imagine allowing yourself the same release tonight, not by pushing worry away, but by giving it less space, narrowing the world gently until only what is necessary remains. Nothing here asks you to be brave, only to be present, to rest within boundaries shaped by generations before you. As this story carries on, we will begin to notice something else. A soft realization that many modern comforts, so familiar we barely see them, are quiet descendants of these ancient fears, transformed not into threats, but into kindness. For now, let the night continue to hold you. Let old fears remain at a distance, shaped into gentle forms that no longer disturb your rest. The rhythm knows how to carry you forward, and you do not need to guide it. Here in the monastery, night is not empty. It is full of quiet presence. The soft breathing of others nearby, the faint crackle of a dying candle, the distant sound of wind brushing against stone. These are not disturbances, they are anchors, reminders that one is not alone. Even now, many people sleep better with gentle sounds nearby. A fan, rain, distant traffic, echoes of the same ancient comfort. Silence filled just enough to feel safe. There is no shame in needing this. It is not weakness. It is memory, carried forward in the body. But human, shaped by trial and repetition, by centuries of learning what calms the heart and what disturbs it. For now, let the story continue to carry. You let the small rituals of the past blend gently with the present moment. There is nothing you need to. Remember, nothing you need to do. The night is already doing its work. And as these ancient habits settle quietly around you, we will move forward toward a soft discovery. A realization that many of the comforts we rely on today are not new at all. They are old friends returning in familiar forms. Time inside the monastery does not rush forward. It circles gently, returning again and again to the same familiar points. Like breath rising and falling without effort, the people who live here do not ask what hour it is, because the hour announces itself softly. A bell, a change of light. The way the air cools against stone, life is shaped not by urgency but by repetition, and repetition becomes comfort. Long ago, before calendars filled with appointments, before glowing screens divided the day into fragments, people trusted larger rhythms than themselves. The sun's slow arc, the deepening blue of evening, the quiet certainty that night would arrive without being summoned. Inside these walls, the day is not something to conquer, it is something to inhabit. The monks move through their hours like water through channels carved by time, each moment flowing naturally into the next. There is a morning stillness when the world feels newly made. Footsteps echo faintly. Robes brush against stone. The air smells clean, almost untouched. The bell sounds not as a command but as a reminder. This moment has arrived and it will pass. No one here tries to hold on to a moment longer than it wishes to stay. When the bell rings again, hands pause, thoughts loosen. Attention shifts without resistance. This is how life becomes gentle, not because it is easy, but because it is allowed to move. Outside the monastery, centuries unfold. Villages grow and shrink. Roads are carved into the land. Markets rise with noise and color. But within these walls, the rhythm remains steady. The same pattern repeated until it becomes part of the body itself. Like a heartbeat, unnoticed until it falters, deeply missed when it disappears. These hours were once called sacred, not because they were grand, but because they were shared, everyone knowing where they were in the day. Everyone breathing within the same invisible structure, a structure that held them when the world beyond felt uncertain. If you listen closely now, you may feel something familiar stirring, that quiet relief of knowing you do not need to decide what comes next. The bell has already done that for you, and in that surrender, there is rest. As daylight fades, the monastery grows. Quieter sounds, soften movements, slow shadows stretch. Along the walls, like long memories, evening arrives not with drama, but with acceptance. Candles are lit, small flames steady and calm, pushing back the dark just enough, no more than necessary. This was never a place of excess. It is a place of enough light, enough warmth, enough time. Beyond the monastery, ordinary people lived by echoes of the same rhythm. Farmers rising with dawn, resting when light faded. Families gathering not by schedule, but by habit. Meals shared because it was time, not because a clock insisted. Even now, traces of those rhythms linger, quietly shaping our days. We still divide time into pieces: morning, afternoon, evening, night. We still feel the pull of rest when darkness settles. Even if we resist it, even if we fill it with light and sound, the body remembers. Perhaps that is why certain routines feel comforting even today. Closing curtains at night, preparing a simple meal, washing hands before rest. Small acts that tell the nervous system, you are safe now, you may slow down. Rules were not created to restrict, but to reassure, to say someone has thought about this already, you may rest inside the pattern. As the hours repeat, days blur gently into one another, not in confusion. Imagine living this way, not needing to decide when to stop, because stopping arrives naturally, not needing to measure productivity because existence itself is enough. There is a deep kindness in that idea, one we often forget. Tonight, as you lie listening, you are allowed to borrow that kindness. You do not need to finish the day perfectly. You do not need to understand it completely. The rhythm of night has already begun to carry you. Notice again your breathing, the steady in and out, like the bell that rings without urgency. Like the hours that arrive without demand, nothing here asks you to hurry. Bodies. Retreat behind thick curtains and heavy walls. The outside world fades not because it disappears, but because it can wait. And so the night deepens, candles burn lower, silence grows fuller. The hours continue their gentle turning, holding everything together without effort, without noise. As this story moves forward, we will follow those quiet traces into our own lives, discovering how much of that ancient calm still surrounds us, unnoticed, waiting to be felt. There is a quiet moment that arrives every night. Whether we notice it or not, it comes softly, without announcement. A moment when the world outside your window grows less demanding. And the mind, tired from carrying the weight of the day, begins to loosen its grip. If you are listening tonight, allow yourself to settle just a little deeper. You don't need to adjust anything. You don't need to remember anything. Simply let the sound of this story become part of the room you are in, like a gentle current of air moving through a still space. Perhaps there's a familiar hum nearby, a fan turning slowly, air flowing in steady circles. That quiet, continuous sound that asks nothing of you, only to exist. Long before electricity, long before schedules filled our days with urgency, humans learned to live by rhythms that did not hurry. Rhythms that repeated and repeated until the body itself began to trust them. Tonight's story is not meant to be followed closely. It is not a lesson to be mastered. It is something older and softer than that. This is a story meant to drift beside you as you rest. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Tedious History for Sleep. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, let us begin somewhere far from the present moment. Imagine a place built not to impress, but to endure. Stone walls thick enough to keep the heat of summer out, and the cold of winter at bay. A place where time is not measured by numbers, but by repetition. You are standing at the edge of an old monastery, not the kind you find on postcards. No dramatic towers, no crowds, just stone, weathered by centuries of wind and patience. The air is cool here, even in daylight. It carries the faint scent of old wood and clean linen. Somewhere nearby a bell rings. Not loudly, not urgently. It rings as if it knows there is nowhere else to be. The bell does not call anyone to hurry. It does not demand attention. It simply marks the passage of time, a gentle acknowledgement that another small portion of the day has moved on. Inside the monastery, life unfolds slowly. Men in wide, heavy robes walk along narrow corridors. Their footsteps are soft against the stone floor. Each movement feels deliberate, but never rushed. The robes hang loosely from their shoulders, allowing the body to rest inside them. As if even clothing here understands the importance of ease. No one checks the time. No one asks what comes next. The day is divided by familiar sounds. A bell in the morning. Another when the sun reaches its height. One more as evening settles in. These sounds repeat day after day, year after year, until the rhythm becomes something deeper than habit. It becomes trust. The walls of the monastery hold more than warmth. They hold silence. A silence so complete that even thoughts seem to soften when they enter it. Here, the world beyond the walls feels distant. Wars rise and fall. Kings are crowned and forgotten. Cities grow loud, then louder still. But inside this place, time does not run. It flows. and the people who live here allow themselves to be carried by it. There is a comfort in knowing what comes next, not because it is exciting, but because it is familiar. Morning light slips through narrow windows, drawing pale lines across the stone floor. Dust floats lazily through the air, illuminated for a moment, then disappearing again. The monks rise when the bell sounds. They work, they eat, they pray, they rest. Each action gently giving way to the next. No moment fights to be more important than another. And perhaps that is the secret this place holds. A secret we have not entirely forgotten. Even now, centuries later, our bodies still respond to repetition, to ritual, to the quiet reassurance of knowing where we are in the flow of things. When night falls over the monastery, candles glow behind thick stone walls. The outside world fades into darkness. Inside, everything slows. Curtains are drawn around simple beds, thick fabric creating small, private spaces within shared rooms. Not to shut others out, but to invite rest in. Within those soft enclosures, the body relaxes, the mind loosens, thoughts become less sharp. It is here, in these small pockets of quiet, that humans once learned how to sleep deeply, even when the world beyond the walls felt uncertain. And perhaps, without realizing it, we are still searching for the same feeling. A sense of enclosure, of safety, of time moving gently around us rather than pressing down upon us. As you listen now, notice your breathing. Not to change it, just to feel it, in and out. Like the bell that rings without urgency, like the day that unfolds without being chased. You are not late for anything here. Nothing is waiting for you to perform. This story will continue slowly, patiently, unconcerned with where it ends. And as we move forward, we will wander gently through the quiet habits of the past, discovering how many of them still live softly inside our nights. For now, simply rest in this place where time does not hurry, and where nothing needs to be decided. The bell has rung. The day has passed, and night has arrived, exactly as it always does. Night arrives without ceremony. It does not announce itself. It simply settles. If you are listening now, perhaps the lights around you are already dim. The room feels softer at the edges. Shadows stretch longer, not to frighten, but to rest. You may notice your shoulders dropping just a little, your breath slowing without effort. Nothing is being asked of you tonight. There is nothing to remember, nothing to understand, nothing to hold on to. You are simply here, and that is enough. Somewhere in the background, there may be a gentle sound, a fan turning slowly, or air moving through an open window. A steady rhythm, like time itself, moving without urgency. Tonight's story is not about triumph, not about downfall, not about heroes or villains. It is about something quieter, something that took centuries to become what it is. Something that grew slowly, patiently, almost invisibly while generations lived and faded around it. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, before we drift any further, you don't need to do anything at all. If this quiet space feels comforting, you can always return to it another night. For now, simply stay. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, let us begin. Imagine Paris, not the Paris of noise or movement, not the Paris of crowds and lights. This is Paris in the 12th century, long before the city learned to rush. It is late evening. The river Seine moves slowly, its surface dark and patient, reflecting small points of oil lamp light from the banks. The water does not hurry. It has nowhere else to be. Stone bridges rest above it, heavy and calm, as they have learned to do over time. The air carries the faint scent of damp limestone and cooling earth. Footsteps are rare now. Most doors are closed. And in the quiet near the river, something is beginning. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. Stacks of pale stone sit in neat, silent rows. Wooden scaffolding stands still in the night air, its beams darkened by years of touch and weather. Tools rest where hands last left them. Chisels, mallets, ropes coiled without tension. No one is working now, the builders have gone home. Their names, most of them, will never be written down, yet something remains. An idea. At this hour, it does not yet look like a cathedral. It looks like a thought made of stone. A dream that has only begun to take shape. The ground beneath it feels cool, solid, patient. If you were to stand here, you might feel the quiet weight of it beneath your feet, not heavy, but reassuring. Like the earth itself offering support. There are no kings here tonight. No processions. No voices raised in command. Only time. Time moving slowly enough to be felt. Generations will pass through this place. Children not yet born will one day walk these stones without knowing who first laid them. And that is part of the beauty. The people who began this work knew something important, even if they never said it aloud. They knew they would not see the end. They carved stone anyway. As the night deepens, a thin mist rises from the river. It drifts gently through the unfinished arches, softening their edges. The structure seems to breathe with the air around it. Stone cooling, wood settling, silence growing thicker, kinder. If your eyes feel heavy now, that is all right. You do not need to keep them open. You may simply listen. The story will continue whether you follow every word or not. Long ago, people believed that stone remembered, that it held the warmth of hands long gone, that it carried the patience of those who shaped it day after day without hurry. Here, each block was lifted not for glory, but for continuity. One generation trusting the next to continue what they began. And perhaps, as you rest now, there is something comforting in that thought, that not everything needs to be finished tonight. That some things are meant to unfold slowly over time with care. The cathedral does not rise yet. Not really, it waits. And in that waiting, it teaches. Just as this story will not by pushing forward, but by drifting gently like the river nearby, moving steadily beneath the moon. In a moment, we will follow the slow passage of years. Not through events, but through seasons. Through quiet repetition. Through hands learning the same movements their fathers once knew. But for now, rest here. In the cool night air, beside stone that has all the time in the world. The journey has begun softly. Morning does not arrive here with urgency. It seeps in slowly pale light touching stone that has grown accustomed to patience. The river reflects the sky in muted tones, never bright, never demanding attention. Days in this place do not announce themselves as beginnings. They simply continue what the night has gently paused. If you were standing nearby, you might notice how little seems to change from one day to the next. And yet everything is changing. Not through moments of drama, but through repetition, through hands returning to the same tasks, through breath warming cold air, through stone learning its place in the world. The builders come back as the sun lifts just enough to take the chill from the air. They arrive without ceremony, carrying tools worn smooth by years of use. Some are young, still learning how to listen to the stone. Others move more slowly now, their bodies shaped by decades of labor, their knowledge carried quietly in muscle memory. There is no sense of hurry among them. No clock measuring progress. Time here is counted differently. It is counted in seasons. In how the light falls across the scaffoldings in spring. In how frost settles into the mortar during winter. In how summer heat softens voices and slows movement. The cathedral grows, but not in a way anyone can point to at the end of a single day. A stone is placed, another is shaped, a line becomes a curve becomes an arch, and then the day ends. The structure rises so slowly that even those working on it cannot truly see its change. It is like watching a child grow when you are with them every day. The transformation only becomes visible when time has passed quietly, without being watched. Fathers bring sons to the site. Not for spectacle, but for learning. A chisel is handed down. A technique demonstrated without words. Knowledge moves not through books, but through shared silence. And when a man grows too old to lift stone, he stands nearby instead, watching, correcting gently, offering guidance with a nod or a glance. No one speaks of legacy. And yet, legacy is everywhere. In the way the stone fits exactly where it should. In the way a mistake is corrected patiently, without blame. In the way the work continues even when those who began it are no longer there to see it. The cathedral is not being built for completion. It is being built for continuation. And that idea settles into the space, as steady as the river beside it. You might find your breath matching that rhythm now. Slow, unforced. There is no expectation placed upon you here. Just as no expectation is placed upon these stones to hurry, years pass though they do not announce themselves. A winter feels longer than the last. A summer brings unfamiliar heat. The scaffolding grows taller. The ground remembers every footstep, every pause, every moment of stillness between movements. And through it all, the city changes around this place. Markets shift. Streets expand. Lives begin and end. But the work remains constant, quiet, almost invisible in its persistence. People pass by and barely notice the difference from one year to the next. They assume the structure has always been this way, and perhaps it feels that way even to those who labor upon it. This is how time teaches patience, not by instruction, but by example. The cathedral does not demand attention. It allows attention to settle upon it if one chooses to look. And even then, it does not reveal everything at once. There are no grand unveilings, no moments meant to impress, only steady becoming. As the years continue their soft unfolding, something else grows alongside the stone, a sense of trust. Trust that what is begun will be carried forward. Trust that effort does not need immediate reward to have meaning. Trust that something beautiful can exist even while unfinished. If you are listening closely now, you might feel that trust settling somewhere within you as well, a loosening. A quiet acceptance that not everything must resolve itself tonight. That some parts of life are allowed to remain in progress. The cathedral accepts this truth fully. It rises without anxiety, without fear of interruption. It knows time will continue, because time always does. And so it grows the only way it knows how, slowly, faithfully, without concern for being seen. As evening returns once more, the tools are set down again. Hands are cleaned, voices fade. The structure stands alone, holding the warmth of the day within its stone. The river reflects the darkening sky, and the night settles back into place, just as it did before. Nothing feels unfinished here. Nothing feels rushed. The work pauses, but it does not stop. It simply waits, confident in its own continuation. And perhaps, as you rest now, there is comfort in that idea. That even when you pause, even when you rest, the quiet work of becoming does not abandon you. It simply moves more gently, more slowly, like the seasons themselves. There comes a time, not marked by bells or proclamations, when the work begins to change its character. It is not a dramatic shift. No one announces it. Yet those who spend their days here can feel it, quietly, the way one senses a change in the air before rain. The walls have grown taller now, high enough that the sky feels closer when you stand beneath them. Sound behaves differently here. Voices soften as they rise, footsteps echo longer, then fade. Even silence seems to linger, as if unsure where to settle. This is when the builders begin to think not only of weight, but of balance. Stone is heavy. Everyone knows this. It presses downward with certainty. And yet, here, stone must learn to reach upward, to open space rather than close it. The solution does not arrive as a sudden insight. It unfolds slowly, through observation, through quiet experimentation, through mistakes gently corrected over time. Curving supports begin to appear along the outer walls, arching outward like extended arms. They are not decorative. They are practical. They take the outward force of the roof and carry it safely down into the ground. Later, people will call them flying buttresses. But here, now, they are simply part of the structure learning how to stand. There's something almost tender about them. Stone that looks as if it is leaning away, yet is doing the essential work of holding everything together. Heavy material, arranged in a way that allows lightness to exist. The builders do not speak of genius or innovation. They speak of necessity, of listening to what the building requires, of letting form follow patience rather than ambition. When these arches begin to stretch outward, the interior changes. The walls no longer need to bear all the weight alone. They can open. They can rise higher. They can welcome something new, light. At first, it arrives cautiously. Narrow openings, modest and restrained. Then, slowly, with confidence earned over years, the openings grow larger. Colored glass appears, set carefully into stone frames. It does not shout. It glows. When sunlight passes through it, the air itself seems to soften. Reds deepen, blues cool the space. Golds hover gently, never harsh. The light does not illuminate objects so much as it paints the atmosphere. Stories are told here without voices. Scenes unfold not through words, but through color and shape. You do not need to understand them to feel their presence. They are not meant to instruct so much as to accompany, to offer something calm for the eye to rest upon. The builders step back when the light first enters fully. They do not cheer. They simply watch. Many of them will never see these windows finished, never see all the glass in place. And yet they have prepared the space for it. They have trusted something beyond their own time. This trust settles into the building itself. The cathedral begins to feel less like a structure and more like a vessel. Not holding people, but holding moments. Holding breath. Holding quiet reflection. Outside, life continues as it always has. Carts roll over uneven streets. Voices rise in markets. Children grow. Adults age. Elders fade. None of this stops the work, and the work does not demand that any of it change. The cathedral does not compete with the world. It coexists. Inside, the light shifts throughout the day, never the same twice. Morning brings cool clarity. Midday softens edges. Evening turns everything inward. Stone that once felt cold now feels calm, as if it has learned its role, as if it understands that its purpose is not to dominate, but to support. The arches do not strain. They rest into their function, carrying weight without complaint. There is a lesson here, though no one states it directly. That strength does not need to be loud. That support can be quiet and still be essential. That holding something up does not require being seen. If you find your thoughts slowing now, that is natural. This is not a place that encourages quick conclusions. It invites lingering. Even the light seems unhurried as it moves across the floor, tracing patterns that disappear as gently as they arrive. Time inside the cathedral feels different from time outside. It stretches, it breathes, it does not push forward. The builders sense this change as well. Their movements become more deliberate. Less about effort, more about alignment. Stone placed just so. Angles adjusted by feel rather than measurement alone. The structure responds. It settles into itself, growing more confident with each careful addition. There are moments when nothing seems to happen at all. Days when work pauses because the stone must rest, or the weather insists on patience. These pauses are not seen as failures. They are part of the rhythm, just as rest is part of your own rhythm now. You are not falling behind by slowing down. You are aligning. As night returns again, the light withdraws, leaving behind a sense of space that remains even in darkness. The cathedral holds the memory of illumination, just as stone holds the memory of hands. And in the quiet, beneath arches that seem to float more than stand, the structure waits, not empty, not unfinished, simply present, ready to receive the next day, the next season, the next quiet contribution. And you, listening now, may feel something similar. A sense that nothing more is required of you in this moment. That it is enough to simply be held by the story, the way the sky is held by stone that learned, patiently, how to support it. As the cathedral continues its slow becoming, there is a subtle shift in how people experience it. Not through announcements or ceremonies, but through feeling. Those who step inside begin to lower their voices without being asked. Their footsteps soften. Even their thoughts seem to slow as if the space itself is guiding them gently inward. Light now plays a larger role here. It arrives each day with a different temperament, shaped by clouds, by season, by the angle of the sun. In the early hours, it enters quietly, pale and tentative, brushing against stone like a question. By midday, it gathers warmth, spreading across the floor in broad, calm patterns. And in the late afternoon, it turns inward, deepening in color, inviting rest. The stained glass does not demand interpretation. Its stories are not meant to be read line by line. Instead, they are felt. Color becomes memory. Blue suggests depth and distance. Red carries warmth without urgency. Gold lingers like a thought you do not need to finish. For many, this is the first time light feels like something that can be inhabited, not merely seen, but entered. The builders notice this change as well, though they speak of it rarely. They adjust their work to honor it. Openings are shaped to guide the sun gently, never forcing it. Stone frames are smoothed where hands might brush against them, not for decoration, but for comfort. There is an understanding growing here that the building is not only meant to stand, but to receive. Outside, the city continues its steady rhythm. Seasons pass. Winters bring a sharpness to the air that settles into the stone, cooling it deeply. Summers warm it slowly, until it holds heat long after sunset. The cathedral absorbs these changes without resistance. It becomes a quiet participant in time, rather than an observer. People come and go. Some enter briefly, drawn by curiosity or routine. Others linger, finding something they did not know they were seeking. No one is required to feel anything in particular. The space offers, and that is enough. There are moments when the light aligns just right, casting patterns that seem almost intentional. A shape on the floor that resembles a leaf. A reflection that climbs a column before fading. These moments are not captured or preserved. They are allowed to pass. And in their passing, they leave a gentle trace, a sense of having been present for something fleeting and kind. The cathedral does not try to hold on to these moments. It understands impermanence. The builders, too, understand this more deeply now. Many of them have spent decades here. Their hair has grayed. Their hands bear the marks of long labor. They know they will not see the building complete. And yet, there is no bitterness in this knowledge. Only acceptance. They are part of a sequence, not a conclusion. Each stone they place is both an ending and a beginning. This understanding shapes their work. They do not rush to finish. They do not cut corners to leave a mark. They work as if someone else will one day stand where they stand now, continuing what they began. There is humility in this, quiet and unspoken. The cathedral becomes a place where time feels layered. Past effort supports present stillness. Present care prepares future calm. Light moves through all of it, indifferent to ownership, generous in its presence. If you listen closely, you might notice how your own thoughts behave differently here. They do not line up, demanding resolution. They drift. They overlap. They soften at the edges. This is not a space for answers. It is a space for rest. And perhaps that is why people return again and again, without fully understanding why. They sense something here that does not ask for anything in return. As evening approaches, the light deepens. Colors grow richer, then quieter. The interior darkens gradually, without abruptness. Shadows do not fall sharply. They arrive like guests, settling into corners, leaning against columns. Candles appear, small and steady. Their flames add a different kind of light, intimate and close. They do not compete with the daylight that came before. They simply continue the conversation in another tone. The builders step away once more. Tools rest. Stone cools. The cathedral holds the day within it, remembering light even as darkness grows. This remembering is not active. It does not cling. It simply remains available, ready to receive light again when it returns. And as night settles, the space becomes even quieter. Not empty, but full in a different way. Full of echoes, of warmth held in stone, of moments layered gently upon one another. If your breathing has slowed now, that is natural. This is a place that encourages release. There is nothing you need to take with you from here, nothing to carry forward. You can allow the light to fade, knowing it will return. Just as rest returns after effort, just as calm follows motion. The cathedral stands, not as a monument to completion, but as a companion to time. And in its quiet endurance, it offers you the same permission to pause, to soften, to remember without effort. There are countless lives that pass through this place without leaving a name behind. They arrive softly, as most lives do, and they depart in much the same way. The cathedral does not ask who they are. It does not require their stories to be recorded. It simply receives them, offering the same stillness to each. Some come with purpose, others with habit. Some step inside only briefly, letting the cool air settle on their skin before moving on. Others linger longer, drawn by something they cannot quite define. There are no instructions posted here on how one should feel. No expectation of devotion or understanding. The space allows each person to arrive as they are. A woman pauses near a column, her hand resting against the stone. She does not know who shaped it or how many years it took to place it there. She only knows that it feels solid and calm beneath her fingers. A child looks upward, tracing the height of the arches until his neck grows tired. He does not think of engineering or time. He simply feels small in a way that is not frightening, but reassuring. Somewhere nearby, a man stands quietly, his thoughts heavy with concerns he does not speak aloud. The cathedral does not solve them. It does not try. It simply holds the space where those thoughts can slow, loosen, and rest for a moment. The builders see these people come and go. They do not interrupt. They understand that the structure is no longer only theirs. It has begun to belong to time itself. Each day, as work resumes, they move carefully around those who wander through. There is a shared understanding that this place is becoming something more than stone and labor. It is becoming a pause within the city, a place where movement naturally softens. Years continue to pass, measured quietly by changes in the builders themselves. One man no longer climbs the scaffolding as easily as he once did. Another teaches more often than he works, guiding younger hands with patience rather than force. When someone is gone, there is no ceremony here. Their absence is felt, then accepted. The work continues not out of indifference, but out of respect. To stop would be to deny the continuity they all understand so deeply. The cathedral absorbs these transitions without comment. It has learned that everything changes, and that change does not diminish what has already been given. Stone remembers the warmth of hands long gone. Mortar holds the imprint of effort, without needing to recall names. There is something profoundly gentle in this kind of memory. It does not cling. It does not demand recognition. It simply remains part of the whole. Outside, the city evolves. New buildings rise and fall. Streets are rerouted. Customs shift. Yet this place remains steady, not because it resists change, but because it accommodates it slowly. The cathedral does not rush to define itself. It allows meaning to gather over time, like dust motes settling in sunlight. Those who return after many years notice subtle differences. A new window completed, a wall extended, a space that feels more open than before. But the overall impression remains one of continuity rather than alteration. It feels as though the building has always been this way, even as it continues to grow. This illusion of timelessness is perhaps its greatest gift. It reminds those who enter that not everything is bound to the urgency of a single lifetime. That some things exist on a scale that allows individual worries to soften and release their hold. If you are listening now and find your thoughts drifting toward memories of your own, that is welcome here. Memories do not intrude in this space. They arrive gently, sit quietly, and often leave without demanding resolution. The cathedral does not separate past from present. It allows them to overlap, to exist together without conflict. A man lights a candle, not because he expects an answer, but because the act itself brings a sense of order. The small flame flickers steadily, its light joining countless others that have come before. None of them are preserved. None of them are lost. They simply exist in their moment, then fade. The builders understand this rhythm intuitively. They know that their work too will one day be complete without them. And rather than troubling them, this knowledge brings calm. It frees them from the need to hurry. It allows them to focus on care rather than outcome. Stone is shaped with attention, not because someone will admire it, but because it deserves to be shaped well. This quiet ethic seeps into the walls, into the arches, into the very air. Those who spend time here often leave feeling lighter, though they may not know why. It is not because anything has been resolved. It is because something has been released. The cathedral offers a reminder that existence does not require constant effort to justify itself. That being present, even briefly, is enough. As evening falls once more, the interior darkens gradually. The last visitors drift away. The builders gather their tools, speaking softly, if at all. The structure stands alone again, holding the traces of the day without needing to reflect on them. Night settles into the stone, and in that quiet, all the lives that have passed through remain gently held, not as stories to be told, but as presence that once was, and in some way still is. There are moments when the cathedral feels most alive, not when it is full, but when it is nearly empty. Late at night or just before dawn, when even the city seems to pause, the space holds a different kind of presence. It is then that echoes linger longer, and silence feels layered rather than hollow. In these hours, the idea of power softens. Not the power of stone or structure, but the power people once believed resided in titles, crowns, and authority. Beyond these walls, rulers come and go. Their names are spoken loudly for a time, then more quietly, then not at all. They issue commands, build palaces, wage disputes, and imagine permanence for themselves. Yet here, within this growing structure, power feels distant, almost irrelevant. The cathedral does not respond to commands, it responds to care. Kings may pass through, escorted and observed, their presence briefly altering the rhythm of the space. But even they lower their voices, even they walk more slowly. The stone does not bend to them. It does not acknowledge hierarchy, it remains itself, steady and indifferent to rank. There are stories whispered among the builders about rulers who felt uneasy here. Men accustomed to being obeyed, unsettled by a space that did not react to them. The cathedral does not oppose power. It simply does not participate in it. This neutrality has a calming effect. It reminds those who enter that authority is temporary, while continuity is enduring. A throne may command attention for a generation. Stone shaped with patience may hold space for centuries. Over time, the builders notice that fewer grand figures appear. Or perhaps they simply noticed that their presence matters less. The work continues regardless. The cathedral grows according to its own quiet logic, guided by gravity, light, and human care rather than decree. This absence of domination creates room for something else. Reflection, not the kind that demands conclusions, but the kind that allows questions to rest without answers. People find themselves thinking differently here. Not about what they must do, but about what they can release. The building offers a subtle lesson that power does not always need to act. Sometimes it is enough to remain. This idea settles gently, like dust in sunlight. Outside, history continues its familiar patterns. Conflicts rise and fade. Alliances form and dissolve. Names are carved into records, then worn smooth by time. None of this disturbs the cathedral's slow rhythm. It does not reject history. It simply refuses to be hurried by it. Those who work here come to appreciate this distance. It gives them perspective. They understand that their labor is not tied to the success or failure of any particular reign. It belongs to a longer arc, one that moves beyond individual ambition. This understanding brings a quiet freedom. They work without fear of interruption, without anxiety about recognition. They trust that what they are building will outlast the concerns of the present moment. If you notice your own thoughts drifting away from urgency now, that is natural. This is a place that gently loosens the grip of immediate concerns. It does not ask you to solve anything. It simply invites you to step back and observe the larger flow. The cathedral stands as a reminder that much of what feels pressing in daily life eventually softens. That intensity fades. that what remains is often simpler than expected. Stone, light, space, time. These elements do not argue, they coexist. They teach by example rather than instruction. As night deepens, the sense of hierarchy dissolves further. The absence of activity equalizes everything. Columns and corners share the same quiet. The highest arch and the lowest step rest together in darkness. Power, here, has nowhere to stand, and in its absence, something gentler takes its place. A feeling of being held rather than governed, of existing without needing to assert. This feeling extends outward, touching those who pass through even briefly. They may not articulate it, but they carry it with them when they leave. A subtle shift, a slight easing. The builders feel it too, especially those who have spent much of their lives here. They have learned that influence does not always come from control, that endurance can be more impactful than command, that leaving space for others is sometimes the greatest act of strength. The cathedral embodies this lesson quietly. It does not proclaim it. It lives it. As the hours pass and the night reaches its deepest stillness, the structure seems to settle further into itself. Stone cools, air becomes denser, sound retreats. Nothing is expected to happen, and nothing needs to. This is not emptiness. It is rest. A rest that does not signal an ending, but a continuation. If your breathing has slowed, if your thoughts feel less insistent, you are simply responding to the rhythm of a place that does not demand attention. You are allowed to rest here too, to exist without performing, to let go of the need to hold everything together. The cathedral will continue to stand, quietly, doing what it has learned to do best, holding space, offering stillness, and reminding all who pass through that true power often reveals itself not in action, but in calm endurance. As the cathedral continues its quiet presence, stories begin to gather around it. Not sharply defined stories, not tales with clear beginnings or endings, but soft narratives that drift through the city like evening air. People speak of the place in lowered tones, as if loud voices might disturb something delicate. They do not argue over facts here. They share impressions, whispers of meaning rather than declarations of truth. Over time, these impressions blur gently into legend. Not legend as spectacle, but legend as atmosphere. A sense that something more is present, though it cannot be pointed to directly. Some speak of the hands that built the walls, imagining them guided by faith alone. Others speak of light itself as a teacher, shaping understanding without words. There are mentions of ancient orders, of quiet brotherhoods who valued patience and continuity over conquest. Their names appear, then fade, leaving behind only a feeling of collective effort rather than individual achievement. These stories do not ask to be believed. They ask only to be carried lightly, like a shared dream. The cathedral does not confirm or deny them. It allows them to exist alongside stone and silence, neither elevated nor dismissed. This openness gives the legends their longevity. They are not preserved in rigid form. They change subtly with each telling, adapting to the listener rather than insisting on accuracy. And in this way, they remain gentle. Builders hear these stories too, passed along during breaks or quiet moments at the end of the day. They listen without judgment. They understand that stories serve a different purpose than records. They offer connection rather than certainty. A sense that the work they are part of belongs to something larger than themselves. Over generations, this sense deepens. The cathedral becomes not just a structure, but a shared memory still being formed. Even those who have never worked on it feel a quiet familiarity when they approach, as if they have known it before, in another time, or another version of themselves. This familiarity is not rooted in ownership. It is rooted in continuity. The building has been present for so long that it feels like part of the natural landscape, as inevitable as the river beside it. Children grow up with its silhouette shaping their sense of place. Elders remember it from their youth, both unchanged and subtly different. The legends follow the same pattern. They are remembered not for their details, but for how they make people feel, calm, grounded, less alone. If you notice your own thoughts drifting towards stories you once heard, half remembered and softened by time, that is fitting here. This is a space that welcomes memory without requiring precision. It understands that truth can exist without sharp edges, that meaning does not always need to be proven. As night falls again, the legends quiet. They do not disappear, but they recede, making room for rest. The cathedral stands without narrative, without explanation. Stone does not need a story to remain. It simply is. And yet, the stories linger just beneath the surface, like warmth held in cooled stone, ready to return when light and voices do. This balance between presence and imagination is part of what gives the place its gentle pull. It does not trap attention. It releases it. People leave carrying less than they arrived with. Fewer questions, softer concerns. A sense that some things can remain unresolved without causing harm. The legends do not demand belief because they do not demand anything at all. They exist to accompany, not to instruct. To offer a shared sense of wonder that does not interrupt rest. Over time, even the idea of legend becomes less important than the feeling it leaves behind. A quiet assurance that continuity matters more than certainty. That shared effort matters more than individual recognition. That time, when allowed to move at its own pace, shapes meaning more gently than force ever could. The cathedral embodies this lesson simply by remaining. Night after night, season after season. As you listen now, you may feel that same assurance settling within you. A permission to let stories soften, to let memories blur without losing their warmth, to rest without needing to define what rests with you. The legends will still be there if you return to them. The stone will still stand. Nothing important is being lost. It is simply becoming quieter. And in that quiet, there is room for sleep to arrive naturally, without invitation, without effort. There is a point reached gradually and without announcement, when the cathedral no longer feels like something that is being made. It begins to feel like something that simply exists. The distinction is subtle, but it changes how people relate to it. No longer do they ask how long it will take to finish. The question loses relevance. What matters now is not completion, but presence. The structure has learned how to be part of the city's breathing, rising and falling with the rhythm of days and nights. Time behaves differently around it. Hours pass without friction, minutes stretch gently, then dissolve. People find themselves losing track of how long they have been inside, not because they are distracted, but because there is nothing here urging them to count. This is time without urgency. Time that does not press forward or pull back. It simply moves, steady and untroubled. The builders feel this most clearly. Many of them no longer think in terms of progress. They think in terms of alignment. How stone meets stone, how light settles, how sound carries. Their work has become less about adding and more about listening. The structure communicates its needs quietly, through balance and tension, through the way materials respond to one another. A wall that has settled asks for reinforcement. An arch that has found its strength asks to be left alone. There is no impatience in these exchanges, only attention. Over the years, attention has become the true craft practiced here. Not speed, not innovation, but care sustained over time. This care extends beyond the builders. Those who enter the cathedral sense it immediately, even if they cannot name it. They slow down instinctively. They pause longer than they intended. Their thoughts loosen, drifting away from schedules and obligations. The space does not remove these concerns. It simply sets them aside for a while, like belongings placed gently at the door. In this setting, time feels less like something to manage and more like something to inhabit. You are not moving through it. You are resting within it. This sensation deepens as evening approaches. The light fades gradually, without sudden shifts. Shadows lengthen and soften, blending rather than dividing. The boundary between one moment and the next becomes less distinct. Candles appear again, their flames steady and unassuming. They do not compete with the darkness. They coexist with it, offering just enough illumination to feel present without overwhelming the senses. Sound changes too. Voices become rare. Footsteps echo once, then vanish. The cathedral absorbs these sounds, holding them briefly before letting them go. Nothing lingers longer than it needs to. This is a place that understands release. The builders, now fewer in number, prepare to leave for the night. Their movements are familiar, practiced, unhurried. Tools are set down with care. Surfaces are cleared. There is no sense of finality in these actions, only continuity. They know they will return, or if they do not, someone else will. The work does not belong to any single set of hands. It belongs to time itself. Outside, the city grows quieter. Lights dim. Activity recedes. The river continues its steady movement, reflecting fragments of the sky. The cathedral stands between these elements, neither resisting nor directing them. It allows itself to be shaped by what passes through and around it. This openness is part of its endurance. It does not hold tightly to any one moment. It lets moments arrive, settle, and depart. If you find your own awareness drifting now, that is natural. This is not a story that asks for focus. It asks for presence. You do not need to follow every word. The rhythm is enough. Like breathing, it continues whether you attend to it or not. There is a quiet wisdom in that. The understanding that effort is not always required to sustain what matters. That sometimes allowing is enough. The cathedral embodies this understanding fully. It does not strive to be timeless, it simply accepts time as it comes. Over decades, this acceptance has shaped its character more deeply than any design choice. It feels settled, at ease with itself, comfortable in its incompleteness. This comfort radiates outward, touching those who come near. They may leave with a subtle sense of relief, as if something they were holding too tightly has loosened its grip. They may not notice it immediately. The feeling may surface later, in quieter moments, when they remember how it felt to stand within walls that did not hurry them. As night deepens, the cathedral grows still. Not silent, but restful. Air circulates slowly. Stone cools evenly. The space feels held, complete in its quiet state. There is nothing left to do here tonight. And perhaps, as you listen now, there is nothing left for you to do either. Time will continue its gentle movement, whether you attend to it or not. You are free to rest within it, to let go of measurement, to allow yourself to drift, carried by a rhythm that has learned over centuries how to move without urgency. The night has now settled into its deepest, most unremarkable hour, the kind that arrives so smoothly it leaves no trace of movement behind. And within this hour, the cathedral no longer feels like a place that can be observed or described, but rather like a condition that surrounds you gently. The way still water surrounds a resting stone without pressure and without expectation. The air inside feels evenly distributed, as though it has already learned where it belongs. Drifting slowly through the vast interior without direction or purpose, simply existing in a state of quiet agreement with the stone around it. The walls do not loom or impress anymore. They recede into usefulness, into calm participation. Their surfaces softened by centuries of passing nights that have taught them patience beyond measure. Light, what little remains, has lost its source and its intention, becoming only a faint suggestion of visibility, enough to feel present, but not enough to invite focus. Shadows no longer shift or stretch. They rest where they are, settled into the curves of arches and the bases of columns like thoughts that have finally found a place to lie down. Time here no longer feels like something that moves forward. It feels wide and still, like a lake without wind, where moments do not advance but gently overlap, dissolving into one another until distinction no longer matters. The cathedral seems to understand that nothing more is required of it tonight, that its role now is simply to remain stable and receptive, offering its quiet without commentary. There is no sense of waiting here, no anticipation of morning, no awareness of what comes next. Even the idea of sequence has softened, losing its sharpness, becoming optional rather than necessary. If there were once builders who worried about progress, their concerns have long since faded into irrelevance, replaced by an understanding that endurance does not require urgency. Stone cools slowly now, releasing warmth at a pace so gentle it feels almost imperceptible, as if it knows that sudden change would be disruptive, unnecessary. The floor beneath feels firm but forgiving, a surface that supports without drawing attention to itself, allowing weight to rest naturally, without resistance. Sound, if it exists at all, has been absorbed so completely that it feels theoretical rather than real, as though echoes belong to another time entirely. The space does not ask you to listen. It allows you to stop listening. Sound, if it exists at all, has been absorbed so completely that it feels theoretical rather than real, as though echoes belong to another time entirely. Nothing in this environment holds on to meaning tightly. Everything has learned the value of release. Over countless nights like this one, the structure has learned that presence is enough, that remaining intact and receptive is a form of quiet generosity. Here, separation between inside and outside feels less important, as though boundaries themselves have grown tired and chosen to rest. The cathedral does not protect or isolate. It simply provides steadiness, a neutral ground where nothing needs to be resolved. Over countless nights like this one, the structure has learned that presence is enough, that remaining intact and receptive is a form of quiet generosity. It has watched seasons pass without comment, allowed weather to mark it gently, accepted change without resistance, and through this acceptance, it has become something more than the sum of its materials. Even the vastness of the interior has quieted, shrinking into something intimate, something that feels scaled to breathing rather than to sight. You may notice that words no longer form sharp images, that sentences drift past without demanding comprehension, and that is exactly how this space functions best. It does not reward analysis. It offers rest. The arches overhead no longer feel high or low. They simply curve, holding space in a way that feels inevitable and unremarkable. Columns stand without asserting their strength, their purpose fulfilled so completely that it no longer needs to be noticed. Even the vastness of the interior has quieted, shrinking into something intimate, something that feels scaled to breathing rather than to sight. Breath itself seems to align with the space, lengthening without instruction, deepening without effort, finding a rhythm that feels familiar and unforced. The cathedral does not synchronize with you, it allows you to synchronize with yourself. In this hour, nothing is being recorded, remembered, or judged. Memory has loosened its structure, becoming a soft blur of impressions rather than a sequence of events. Identity, too, feels less defined, less necessary. There is no role to perform here, no perspective to maintain. You are not a visitor, not an observer, not even a listener in any active sense. You are simply present, and even that presence requires no maintenance. The space holds itself, and in doing so, it holds you. Over time, the concept of the cathedral itself begins to dissolve, leaving behind only a sensation of steadiness, of being supported without being constrained. Stone, air, darkness, and quiet merge into a single, continuous state that has no edges. There is no center to return to, no perimeter to reach. Everything important has already arrived, and nothing further is expected. This is not an ending, because endings imply direction. It is a settling, a gentle flattening of experience into something smooth and undisturbed. Sleep, when it comes, will not arrive as an event. It will simply be a continuation of this stillness, a deepening of the same calm that already exists. You do not need to notice the moment it happens. There is no transition to mark, no threshold to cross. The cathedral has already done what it has always done best. Created a space where nothing presses, nothing pulls, and nothing needs to be held together by effort. All that remains is this quiet, stable presence, extending evenly in all directions, allowing awareness to thin and soften until it rests completely. The cathedral has already done what it has always done best. Created a space where nothing presses, nothing pulls, and nothing needs to be held together by effort. As the night deepens, the world seems to agree, quietly and without ceremony, to slow even further, as though every surface, every shadow, every remaining edge has reached a shared understanding that nothing more is required. The cathedral rests within this agreement, not as an object demanding attention, but as a presence that has long since learned the value of stillness. Stone cools gradually beneath the touch of night air, releasing the warmth of the day so slowly it feels almost intentional, as if time itself is taking care not to disturb the calm. Moonlight drifts across the facade without urgency, settling into grooves carved by centuries of weather and patience, tracing lines that were shaped by hands, now long gone hands that once worked not with haste, but with trust that time would do its part. Inside this quiet, the idea of completion no longer holds meaning. The cathedral does not need to be finished, understood, or remembered in any particular way. It simply remains, and that remaining feels enough. The echoes that once filled its halls have softened into memory, and even memory now feels optional, something that can be set down gently, like a heavy coat no longer needed. The air feels thicker, not heavy, but comforting, like a blanket settling into place. Sounds from the outside world arrive only as distant impressions, soft beyond recognition, no longer asking to be identified or interpreted. In this space, the mind is invited to loosen its grip, not by instruction, but by example. The stone does not cling to its past, and neither must you. Centuries pass here without announcement, layered one upon another so gently that no single moment claims importance over the next. Builders came and went, generations followed generations, and still the structure learned how to stand quietly, how to let weight distribute itself naturally, how to trust balance rather than force. That same lesson drifts now into awareness, not as a thought to hold on to, but as a feeling to sink into. There is no need to trace the story back to its beginning, no need to carry the names, the dates, the intentions. Those details can rest where they belong, within the stone, within the slow movement of time that has already taken responsibility for them. Breathing continues, steady and unremarkable, happening without effort, without observation. Each breath arrives and leaves on its own terms, like the tide responding to the moon without needing to be watched. Muscles soften almost imperceptibly, releasing tensions that no longer serve a purpose. The body understands this moment intuitively, recognizing a safe place when it finds one. Here, nothing demands vigilance. Nothing needs to be solved or prepared for. Even awareness begins to thin, not disappearing, but becoming lighter, less defined, like mist dispersing at dawn. The cathedral does not mark endings. It does not signal conclusions or transitions. It exists comfortably in the in-between, where things are allowed to simply continue without direction. Night after night, it has stood through countless versions of quiet, each one slightly different, each one complete in its own way. Some nights were filled with distant footsteps, others with whispered prayers, others still with nothing at all. And yet the stillness remained the common thread, patient and reliable. That patience now feels close, almost tangible, as though it could be leaned into. Thoughts, if they appear, arrive slowly and without edges, unable to gather momentum. They drift through and dissolve before forming stories, before becoming concerns. The sense of time stretches not forward or backward, but outward, becoming less like a line and more like a wide, calm surface. There's no curiosity about what comes next, because next no longer feels necessary. Rest is not something approaching from the distance. It has already arrived, settling gently into every corner of the space. The cathedral does not hold this rest for you. It simply demonstrates that rest can exist without effort, without permission. Stone arches curve overhead, not pressing down, but lifting upward, distributing weight so evenly that gravity itself seems to relax. Light fades gradually, not into darkness, but into a softer version of itself until distinction becomes unnecessary. Inside and outside blur together, and the idea of separation loses relevance. There is only quiet continuity, a sense that things are exactly where they need to be. The past no longer feels distant or close. It feels diffuse, spread thin across centuries until it becomes part of the background rather than a story to follow. The future carries no urgency, no shape that needs to be anticipated. In this space, nothing pulls attention forward. Nothing pulls it back. Awareness settles naturally into the present. then gently slips beyond even that, resting somewhere undefined and comfortable. The cathedral stands, as it always has, not watching, not waiting, not expecting. It does not require acknowledgement. Its role is not to impress, but to remain, offering the same quiet stability it has offered through countless nights like this one. And within that stability, there is permission to let go completely, to stop holding on to the thread of listening, to allow the story to continue on its own without participation. The night does not need witnesses. The stone does not need recognition, and you do not need to stay awake to carry any of this forward. Everything that needs to remain will remain, just as it always has, held gently by time itself, while rest deepens naturally, effortlessly, until even the idea of rest fades into something softer still, something without name or boundary, where the story no longer asks to be followed, and sleep arrives not as an ending, but as a quiet continuation,